Oh man, that is so bullshit. Right, hopefully now I don't sound down pitched. My voice isn't that deep naturally. Well, depending on what you mean by naturally, I guess. But yeah, there was that issue that I had a while ago. I don't know if anyone remembers. I went on some right wing channel on the TV and it like down pitched my voice, and it sounded really horrible, and no one said anything. Um, which was very stressful when I found out afterwards, and there was loads of clips of it everywhere. And I think I did a really good performance, but all people did was talk about my voice. And it's actually not the channel's fault, and it's not even, well, it is my fault, but it's a mix of Windows and the hardware audio thing I have for my guitar battling each other, and for some reason the pitch is sometimes wrong, and I don't know how to fix it. It's something I need to try and fix. I might just get a different hardware device because it's horrible. Anyway, here we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. I am back. So one thing I wanted to do was make this a bit more chill. As you can see, we've got a chat. There's quite a lot of chat going on here. Hello, everyone. I was maybe planning to say hello to everyone, but there's so much chat. I can't say hello to everyone individually. But I can already see some people very kindly gifting some super chats. Jeff Salony, welcome back. I hope all is well. Hopefully this will be a regular thing. Yes. So, what is going on? This is now hopefully going to be a regular thing. It's going to be in this time slot because this works best for me. I know it's jumped around on different days. We used to be on Mondays. We used to be on Fridays at one point. For now, we're going to be Wednesdays at 8 p.m. UK time, which is when this one started. So whatever slice of the world you're in, about this time. And it's going to be a little bit different. What I always wanted to do with Turf Wars before was have this like polished show where I would plan the topics ahead. I mean, I used to do like a presentation and everything. I would plan everything I was going to say in my mind. Then I would show up and it would be very much like a performance. Not really any crowd interaction. And I would just kind of go through all of the things in order which I planned out, talk about them, and then be in at the end of the show. And that's quite a lot of effort on my part. But also, I don't actually think it's the most polished possible thing. From watching what other streamers do, they seem to do like a live streamy thing so they can have interaction with people and cover topics. But it's a lot less planned out. But then afterwards, they like chop it up and edit into relevant topics. So I'm going to try that for a while. I'm going to see, because I personally don't really watch many live streams because you need to be free at the moment the person's free. And I very much appreciate you're all here. And if you like live streams, great. I really genuinely think it's amazing. When I can see all this chat going on, it's so like inspiring. And I can see the number of concurrent viewers going up. Like, it's so great that everyone's here. But also, maybe you're in a different time zone, or maybe you work now, or maybe this is one of your hobby slots or something. And it would be great to be able to watch it back, but maybe not to be able to watch like this monster 2-hour stream. If you like watching monster 2-hour streams or however long this ends up being, then great. But also sometimes it's good to just have a little 10-minute video of like, what does this person who I care about for some reason think about this news item, or think about this argument or something. And they're much more shareable and easier to get through, I think. And especially when we're talking about grim politics, which sometimes this show definitely covers. You might not want to talk about one thing. You might want to watch the whole show, and then I might start talking about, you know, the topic that affects you, and it's just too much to listen to, and you don't want to skip the whole stream. So I'm going to try and do little, like shorter segment videos based on what we do here. So if you want the live stream experience, please turn up here 8 p.m. UK time. You will get a lot more here. I'm hopefully going to respond to questions that people have in chat. I'll read out your super chats if I see them. For example, $5 Canadian from Cerulean Serpent. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. But also, if you want just the shorter videos, then I'm going to give that a go too. I've practiced some editing. We're going to see. I kind of hate editing, but I've got some new tools, so hopefully that'll be hopefully I'll make it easier. So if you're wondering what this channel is going to be like going forwards, we're going to try that. I would like your feedback. Yeah, it's kind of Turf Wars 2.0, but it's actually kind of Turf Wars 5.0 because this is like the 5th rendition of me trying something like this. So we can call this Turf Wars 5. The live stream can be like Turf Wars 5, but we're not going to have the cool intro and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of just going to be like this. And then I've also got like a presentation setting. So, ta-da! It's like the same thing, but I'm in the corner and I've got the thing. Maybe I'll make it so we get the whole screen here because it's kind of cutting off the left. But I don't know. We'll work it out. But yeah. So welcome. So I do have a list of things that I want to talk about. I guess yeah, just see what chat's saying. 10 euros from Sale. Team Lashko forever. Yeah, amazing. I went to Slovenia again this year. It was pretty good. It wasn't my best time there, but it was because of family and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's a good time. It's always good to be in Slovenia. Beautiful country. $9.99 from Jeff Saloni. Live streams, yeah. So if you like live streams, here you are. Hello. So I guess maybe the first question that people have that I want to talk about, whether you actually have it as a question or not, is where the hell have I been? So I started, well, say obviously, I started like live streams and stuff in 2020 during lockdown, something to do to stop me from going insane. And I just really loved it. Like I like talking. I like arguing with people. I particularly like doing the call-in shows like Transatlantic and Atheist Experience and The Line and all these others. And then going on people's podcasts, and that's really great. And I also like doing my own show because it lets me cover my own topics and it has all you great people. So that's quite cool. But it is a lot of effort, and it's not just time effort. It's not like, oh, I sit down, I write a load of stuff for 3 hours and then we get going. Because it is that too. Like you get home from work. I still work like a 9-to-5 job, and I get back from work and I cook dinner and then I set up stream and then I do this and then like it stops whenever, and I've basically done 2 full days of work. But it's also a lot of emotional it's quite an emotional burden to constantly be reading all of this news and stuff. And I know a lot of you do that too, and you probably burden yourselves with that too. But then there's the extra level of, I feel like I need to understand it very fully before I start talking to people about it. So I, try and do my own research on it and talk to the people involved with it, which means, please don't turn this into a call-in show. No, this is not going to be a call-in show. Don't worry. This is not going to be a call-in show. This is going to be my show where I just talk about stuff. We might have guests, but we're not. It's not going to be a call-in show. But yeah, so it's quite stressful to try and keep on top of all of the news. And also I did a lot of arguing with the most horrific people on earth, which is also quite a burden. And then they notice me, and as soon as they start noticing you, basically if you're a trans person with like more than 1,000 followers on social media, then you probably got some dedicated freak who is obsessed with you and has to try and ruin your life or something. And obviously I've got quite a few followers on various platforms, and so there are quite a lot of them, which is another burden, and it all adds up. But I think the thing that was stressful, but I was managing it. And I think the things that kind of pushed me to the edge where I felt like I needed a break was a combination of things. One was it was just getting so stressful that basically when this stuff directly affects you, as some of you will know, but some of you watching definitely won't know personally, when something's like literally looming over your own head. If you're someone who cares passionately about trans healthcare for trans children, for example, that's really horrible. And as a trans person, it really affects me when I see people lying about it or it getting banned in ridiculous countries like the UK. And that's really demoralizing. But it doesn't affect me personally. It affects my close friends, parents of trans children, and it affects real humans who I care about. And I empathize with people stuck in that situation. But when it's stuff that directly affects me too, it's not even like I can. It's much harder to hold yourself up as like a, we're gonna get through this, because you've got your own worries about your own future too. So that was very stressful. And one of the things that was kind of keeping me alive on that was, in the UK, we until recently had the Conservative Party in power, and they were in power for 14 years, which was fucking grim. And they just have torn apart this country and completely ruined it. But one of their things, obviously, is they were attacking trans rights. And I kept feeling like they're going to do something. They're going to take away something that directly affects me. And I need a plan in action to do that. And that kind of fear was part of what was motivating me to to do stuff. But also it was so hanging over my head. It was kind of crushing me. And so one of the things that was keeping me going was just thinking, right, they're going to get voted out. We all knew they were going to get voted out. I was just like, we've just got to make it to this date. We've just got to make it to this date. And sure, the Labour Party are absolutely trash, and they're barely even any different. I didn't vote for the Labour Party. I wasn't, someone who believed that they would actually make a difference. But it was just some kind of deadline. I've just got to keep going to this moment. I've just got to keep going to this moment. And then I got there, and all of the stress of, like the abuse from the gender criticals and stuff, and the stress of watching people lose their rights around the world, and like children here in the UK, and that just kind of overwhelmed me, and it broke me a bit, and I just burnt out, basically. I needed some time out, and I think this happens to a lot of people. I think that in any activist space, not just trans people, not just LGBT people, in all activist groups, there's only so much of this you can take and do. However strong person you are, it is going to break you eventually. It's broken me before, and I got back, and then it broke me again, and now I'm back here. And what's important is when it breaks you, that it's just like a temporary break. If you decide you never want to do activism again, that is fine, but as long as it doesn't destroy you as a person. So if you are someone who wants to do what I do, or what other trans people that you look up to do, or other activists from other, walks of life do, then please do that. But also just bear in mind, it will break you. You are not invincible. I think I'm like above average at surviving this kind of thing. Not saying anyone else is weaker than me or anything like that, but I'm very good at emotionally deflecting abuse and things and rationalizing it away. And even then, it's just, they do things that you can't deflect and rationalize away, like, post your home address online or something like that. That's kind of stuff isn't something that will ping off anyone. But it hasn't destroyed me, and it's not going to destroy me, and I'm not going to stop fighting for my future and for your future. And I would hope that's the same for you. You've just got to sometimes burn out, sometimes take a break. And I think one of the things that I want to talk about this stream is how to stay positive and survive. Because yeah, it's very important to do so. It's very important to stay positive and to survive. I am back here now talking to you guys, and there was definitely a chance that wouldn't happen. And I think, well, not the world. The world is better because I'm in it, but the world is better because everyone's who's trying to fight to make it a better place is in it. But certainly thinking about the horrors of the world, there's a good saying that I've seen thrown around a lot recently, especially in the context of American politics, but just in general, is don't capitulate in advance. And what that means is, if you get some fascist in power, like Donald Trump, don't be like, okay, we've lost. I just give them all of my power and rights. I'm just giving up, turn over. Don't start just going along with it just because they won. Because it's still immoral, like what they're trying to do. It's still wrong. It's still hurting people. It's still hurting you. And they only have power because people give them power. And I mean, they have all the guns and all the money, so they definitely have some real world power, but they don't have unlimited power. They can't control every aspect of your life. And so one of the things that all of these anti-human rights movements try and do is demoralize people, because when you're demoralized, you give up. And as people start giving up and people start breaking, there's less of us to hold each other up, and then more of us start breaking, and it becomes like a snowball, and it gets easier and easier for them and harder for us. And you can see this in the big organizations, and you can see it on a personal level with the bigger activists, and you can see it on the small scale with just like your friends around you and smaller scale activists and local stuff. When the big stuff breaks, it affects the morale of everyone. And so I think it's important to keep your own morale high as best as you can. So the first thing I want to point out for that is, have something in your life that is not this. And I'm sure lots of you do, but I know that some of you don't. And I know that at some points in my life, I have not. Because I, sometimes get obsessed with things. Trans rights really affect me. I really care about it. And I got obsessed with fighting for it. And it became like the sole thing that I thought about for a long time. And that's fine for a little bit. But it just, it consumes you. It controls your emotions, and then it breaks you. So you really need to have enforced breaks. And so now I've set up my schedule where what I used to do for Turf Wars 4 and previous was, at any moment I see on the news or anything on Twitter or whatever, I think, oh, this could fit into Turf Wars. And I open my document up and I, add screenshots and descriptions and notes. And I was basically working for Turf Wars 7 days a week, at 24 hours a day, any moment. Like sometimes I'd be the kind of idiot who goes on Twitter at midnight or something, just as I'm trying to go to sleep, see some horrible news story. Suddenly I'm writing about it in my app in order to talk about it next show. And that just constantly being on the job, basically, just wears you out so much. So I've got enforced break times. My current thing that I'm now obsessed with is competitive Pokemon cards, which you may or may not have seen me talking about if you follow me on various other platforms. But if you don't, hello YouTube. I am obsessed with competitive Pokemon cards. It's really fun, and it means nothing. It's so unimportant. What I like about it is it's literally meaningless. I can go and play Pokemon cards. I get these little cute monstery things. I get to shuffle shiny bits of cardboard. And then I play with my friends, and I win or I lose, and I come home, and my life's exactly the same. It didn't matter. The worst possible thing that you can get the worst luck ever, and you can get frustrated at Pokemon cards, but it's meaningless compared to trans rights, and that's great. And I think I just seen someone in chat saying mine is painting Warhammer. I feel like the trans community might be overrepresented in the Warhammer community. I don't know, but it's definitely something that seems to show up on my timeline a lot. I actually think trans people are overrepresented in card games. I don't know why. There was a time recently where the North American national champion for Pokemon cards was a trans person. The best Yu-Gi-Oh player in the world was a trans woman. Magic the Gathering has a few good high-quality trans players. Sometimes I go to a tournament and there's nearly as many trans women as there are cis women. I don't know what's going on, but it's something apparently we do, is nerdy things. But get a hobby, enforce break from it, and not just oh yeah, I like computer games and sometimes I do that to unwind. Schedule it in, or don't schedule it if you don't like having a schedule, but be I have to play some computer games this week. I have to take a break. It's enforced, otherwise I'm doing myself a disservice. Speedrunning, yeah, speedrunning's another one. Why are trans people in speedrunning? I don't really know. And that's something I am also guilty of. I did a bit of Mario 64 speedrunning for a while. I was in the top 1,000 for 16-star emulator, if that means anything to anyone, which is terrible, but it's not exciting. But yeah, having a mental mental break is really important. That's one of the things that I want to enforce onto everyone. I'm forcing you. I'm telling you, if you do not schedule in some you time, you are opposed to trans rights. You must look after yourself first. It's like the thing in an aeroplane where they say, you know, if the masks come down, you've got to put on your own mask before helping someone else, because you need to be able to breathe oxygen in order to be able to help someone else who's struggling to breathe oxygen. And it's the same in this. You have to look after yourself first. And if that means being like me and taking a 9-month break, do it. Because I mean, you might be frustrated that I effectively gave up for 9 months. I kind of am a little bit frustrated at myself that I gave up for 9 months. But at the same time, what do? I either give up for 9 months and come back stronger than ever, or I just like die or disappear forever. So who's this person? Katie, have you ever considered taking up mayo baths as a hobby? I cannot believe the disgusting mayo lobby is here already. They don't leave me alone. They're the real reason I burnt out. But no. Anyway, so that is one thing. You must take breaks. But I think another thing that I want to talk about is about, just trying to think which thing I want to talk about second. I think the second thing that I want to talk about is how, because this is going to lead into talking about community. It's how we talk to others about the bad news and fears that we have. And I think this is different if you are in a position like me where I have a decent sized platform, or you're someone who has a much bigger platform. It's quite different than if, you know, your platform is you and your 5 friends or something. Or, you know, if there's a gender critical person watching you and you're one single friend. But, you know, if you, and this is probably going to be talking to people who I see, so they're probably more like people like me, but I think it is worthwhile advice even if you are just not very public and you just have a few friends. You need to try not to add to the fear mongering. As I was saying earlier, one of the important strategies of transphobes and racists and, you know, all the other kind of bigots is, sure, they want legal change. They want real physical change in the systems around us. They want to ruin your life. Absolutely. And they'll do that in any means possible. But one of their key things is they want to create fear. They want you to give up. They want you to capitulate in advance. They want you to stop fighting back and to stop trying, because they just don't want you to exist. And the more you fight back and the more you try, the harder it is for them to do that. They always want to feel like they're winning, and that's why they often just completely lie about what's going on and create these like wins for themselves out of nothing, or even out of objective losses for them. Like, for example, Alison Bailey, who's won in court against Stonewall like 3 times and has appealed all 3 times because she just keeps losing. But you know, they're trying to create fear. They're trying to, you know, when the Times writes an article saying thousands of detransitioners to sue people who help trans people have healthcare, the reason they're saying that is they're trying to scare doctors. And when they say, oh, they might change the law so that trans women are banned from the toilets like tomorrow or something, they're trying to make you scared. They're trying to make you think twice about going out in public. They're trying to make you think twice about applying for a job where you might have to use a toilet with colleagues. And like, it feels very real in the moment when you're seeing these stories. But if you zoom out, like you go and look at what the Times was saying about the state of trans rights, like 5-6 years ago, they were saying all the same stuff. Like, maybe the government will change it so trans people will be banned from hospitals. Like, that's a topic today. That was a topic like 7 years ago, and they haven't changed it yet. They might, but they haven't. And that fear mongering really eats away at your morale. But we also do that. Like, it's not just the Times, it's not just the gender criticals, it's not just Trump and the MAGA lot and stuff. We do it too, to ourselves, because it's terrifying. Like, I do it too. I've caught myself and I've also not caught myself. I've caught myself writing a post like, we are totally fucked. They're going to take away all our human rights. Game over, move out of the country. And, that kind of attitude. Because that's what I felt in the moment. And then I stop and I'm like, if I write this is going to be demoralizing for so many people. I've read from other like trans rights activists and feminists and stuff who have a similar sized platform to me or bigger, where they've had a little moment like that and they've written it, and it is like struck fear into my heart. It has caused me to panic. It stopped me from being able to think and do things in that moment. And I'm not saying I'm blaming them for writing that, because I get those fears, and I think lots of you probably get those fears too. But I do think you need to be careful about writing that. I'm not tone policing you. I'm not saying you're not allowed to express your emotions. You need to vent. And if you can't afford a therapist, or you don't like therapists, or they're not working for you, and you can't vent to your friends, or maybe you're stealth and you can't even tell anyone, or you don't have a partner, if you're feeling trapped, maybe you need to go online and do it. But maybe it's better to have an anonymous small account to do it. Maybe it's better to do it on Discord, where it's just a bunch of people who like Warhammer or whatever, than it is to do it as like a political announcement. This is something that I've actively been thinking about for a while, but I think even in friend groups, like sometimes I meet up with a bunch of trans people, not calling out any of my friends here, I'm just as guilty as them. Sometimes you meet up with a bunch of trans people, you all just talk about your fears for the first like hour. You're like, oh, they're going to take away our human rights, we're going to lose all access to healthcare, Trump's going to end the world. Have a little panic, and everyone gets out of their system, and then you're like, right, let's play Mario Kart. And then you don't do anything about it. And all you've really done, I mean, you vented. Venting is important. But maybe you've just contributed to the fear that everyone's feeling. And this fear is so paralyzing. Like, I sometimes feel like, you open the news and there's 5 things that have just happened in the last 24 hours. They're removing trans people's human rights in Florida, and the UK government's planning to delete trans children from schools, and in India they've just, and it's suddenly like, oh God, I don't even know which thing to focus on first. It's terrifying, and maybe I should start writing a letter to my MP, but maybe I should actually write a complaint to this thing, and you don't do anything. You just panic for a bit, and then it's too much, and then you have to go and do your hobby or a distraction or something. And so what I'd like to encourage is venting responsibly, I guess is what I'm saying. How I do it often, there's a few people I have on WhatsApp who I trust about politics stuff, who know what I'm talking about. If I go to them, it's not a well-meaning cis person ally who doesn't really know what's going on, who I vent to, and then they ask me a load of questions that stress me out. People who know what I'm talking about, they know who I am. I just go and vent at them. Sometimes they vent back at me, and we have our little thing, and we get it out of the way. Maybe we kind of panic each other a little bit. Then we remind each other it's still okay for now. We're still surviving. We're still here. We're still able to fight. And then we're much more able to carry on fighting. We've not contributed to the fear-mongering. Just remember as well, if you see someone like me or anyone else saying, this is pointing towards the end of trans rights in the USA or something, it's terrifying. It is pointing in that direction, potentially. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's not happening today. It's not happening tomorrow. And that fear is just going to stop you from acting. It's going to stop you from doing something. So just bear that in mind. But this is going to lead on to the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is community. Man, the chat is mental. You guys are talking about a lot of stuff. I'm really appreciating it. It's exciting. I'm seeing the word plasma a lot. I don't know where this come from. I saw people talking about Labour for a little while. Labour in the UK are terrible. I don't know which one's worse. the Democrats or Labour in the UK. They're both pretty bad for trans people. But yeah, no, I'm sure that'll ignite the chat for the next 10 minutes. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was community. Oh, 1 second. I can do this kind of thing now where it doesn't seem like such a stress. This is another thing, like having a really polished show is quite stressful. Now I can just take a phone call and say, hello, I'm on air, call back later. It's not so stressful. I don't just see someone calling me like 15 times and worrying that, like, I don't know, the house is on fire downstairs or something. Anyway, let's do a little intro to the segment because I'm going to chop this up and put it into a YouTube video. The next thing I want to talk about is like community and stuff. I watched in the wake of the particularly the US elections. I watched a lot of analysis videos and what can we do videos, and much of that ends up being like general leftist organizing, but it's also worth watching it from, you know, what the liberals are saying and what the Democrats are saying, and just to see what everyone has to say and see who's positive and who's negative and who might have some good ideas. And a lot of people, particularly the further left you go, say things like, you know, we need to organize and we need communities. And I'm like, okay, I trust this person saying that's probably good. Maybe they can, some people are like, here's an example where community saved the day, and here's an example of a company that's actually a cooperative, and you're like, okay, but I don't really know what organizing is. I don't really know what community, like, what does that mean? I'm not an expert on this, and you'd probably be better off reading a book on it, and I can't even recommend you a book. I'm just not an expert. But I can tell you what I've gathered from talking to trans people for the last decade and about trans rights, and what I think is our strengths and what I think we can do more of going forwards, and why it's important. So trans people as a group or as a category or as a concept have existed for a long time, like, you know, hundreds of years. The thing that is causing transness likely has existed as long as humans and probably before. But as like a political group, we haven't existed for very long at all. Like we had this famous article, like the transgender tipping point, which was like 15 years ago or something now. And how everyone's talking about increased trans visibility, and obviously this is where the anti-trans movement has come from, is it's like a backlash to us being visible, but it's a backlash to us being a political group. And I mean, before the internet, how did trans people as a group do anything politically? I mean, it was too dangerous for most people to be openly trans, and there's so few of us that unless you live in a big city with like an LGBT bar or organization, you likely never meet another trans person other than at the gender clinics. And the gender clinics are trash, and you don't really want to be there, and you might not even be able to get to one. And so, you know, we didn't have a community, we didn't have a political group. There's obviously a lot of history with the wider LGBT movement, and you know, that's been going on since way before the internet, for sure. And there have been groups and stuff, but not on like a wide scale. Now with social media, and the internet and blogs and stuff, you're able to talk to hundreds. I've talked to thousands of trans people in my life, and not just at Pride and stuff where you meet up with them, but online. I've got loads of friends. I can see some of you in the chat that I recognize quite a few of your names. I've never met you. You've never met me, but we don't just talk and hang out and know bits about each other's lives. But, you know, I've got people who I know who really know about the UK law. I know people who really know about, you know, medical stuff. I know people who really know about what to do if this is happening. And I can go and talk to them, and they can talk to me and ask me things that I know about, and we can all talk, and this is how we share information. And that is like the first step of community and organization. is talking to each other. I mean, trans Twitter was genuinely a really good resource. Like, Twitter's always been horrible. Even when it was good, it was bad. Because you know, it's a bit of a toxic kind of thing in general. But it was still great. I mean, that's where I learned about everything with transition. Like, that's how I learned how to medically transition and where to get information about surgery and like political positions and moral positions, and where I worked out a lot of my views. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of you, and a lot of you probably come from Reddit and from YouTube chats, and this kind of stuff is where people, when they first are coming out to themselves, start learning about trans rights and trans people. And then you stay there and you carry on talking to people and you help the others behind you. And we organize as a political bloc. And that means that when something is happening, we can all do something together. Not in perfect unison, because we're not like ants. That would be amazing. But also because we're all just random people. Like, there's a lot of you that probably would have nothing in common with me if we weren't both trans people or LGBT people or interested in feminism and LGBT rights. If we already had equality, we might not even be aware of each other, and that's fine. But it's good that, you know, we found each other and we can all work together and generally head in the same direction. So I think that another thing that I want to focus on going forwards is building a community, and not like building the Katie Montgomery community, hashtag like and subscribe, you know, buy my t-shirt, go on Patreon or whatever. I don't have a t-shirt. I don't have a Patreon. You can like and subscribe if you like. But that's not the kind of community I'm interested in building. It's more, this is a place where we can fight together for LGBT rights and feminism and skepticism. Because all those things are linked in my mind, and just factually. And we can connect with the wider trans community, and not everyone here is going to agree with me on everything. There are lots of high-profile trans activists that I don't agree with on a lot of things. That's fine. I just think if we're generally pointing in the same direction, when something comes up that you know about or you're good at, that would be great. You know, it'd be great if you can contribute to that. I get so many people messaging me and talking to me saying, like, Katie, I really want to help. I have time, I have money, I have the energy. What can I do? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, what am I doing? I'm just fucking arguing with idiots on Twitter. By the way, in case you're watching this back in like 2 days and you're like, she keeps saying Twitter. Twitter's been dead for like years. Is this recent video? Yes, I'm not going to call it X. Fuck off. It's Twitter and it's dead. And I don't go on Twitter anymore either. But it's, when I say Twitter, I mean public social media apps in general. Like, I say go on Blue Sky because that's where the trans community seems to be reconnecting and reorganizing, and that's kind of where we need to go. In fact, let's do that first. Let's talk about this. I'm going to give you another example of organizing in a minute, but here we are. This is Blue Sky. This is my Blue Sky profile. Ta-da! It looks exactly like Twitter from like 4 years ago, and it basically is like Twitter from 4 years ago. Oh, have I got the wrong setting? Yeah. Okay, that's better. The chat is back. So Blue Sky is basically Twitter. I'm not sponsored by Blue Sky. I'm not sponsored by anyone. Blue Sky is still probably bullshit. It's just like Twitter from 2014 or something. Like, there's transphobes here. There's racists here. You still could write something and get cancelled for some misunderstanding. Yeah, it's all of those things. But it's not like Twitter in 2024. It's like Twitter in 2014. There's a bunch of left-wing people here. You can have a conversation without someone posting a picture of a lynching video underneath you. There aren't people with Nazi imagery in their profiles getting a 1.8 million likes. it doesn't the algorithm doesn't promote people who pay to be seen. It's just a bit more basic, and for now it's decent. So I think if you're interested in having a conversation, YouTube is still fine ish enough. Blue Sky is still fine ish enough. Like, I'm sure the Reddit's all right. I don't really go on Reddit. But some of them, like obviously Truth Social, Gab, like Twitter or X or whatever, they're all just right-wing hellholes. Full transphobes just completely have, X even bans you from saying the word cis. Like, there's just no freedom of speech on any of those platforms. You're not allowed to have your ideas. You can't go 5 seconds without being abused. It's just not worth being there. But these platforms are still useful. Like, we can all complain about how Blue Sky hasn't banned Jesse Single yet. They probably won't ever. Probably in 10 years' time, Blue Sky will be a fascist hellhole, because that seems to be what happens to all internet apps. But that doesn't mean you should give up on this kind of stuff entirely. That doesn't mean you should give up on all social media entirely. It doesn't mean we should be really angry about it and just not do, because this stuff is still useful. I can see loads of people saying, yeah, Facebook is cringe. Yeah, Reddit is a shithole. Yeah, Blue Sky is barely livable. I haven't been called a groomer once on Blue Sky, so for all its failings, it's still better than Twitter. Yeah, that's true. Neither have I. I've had some of the Twitter classics. I've not had a dick pic yet. I don't think you can be sent pictures on DMs. That's probably why. I've had sugar daddies. I've had scammers. I've had the people who just say hi as if that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I still think these things are important for making community. And if you don't like Twitter, I for some reason I'm addicted to this kind of thing. I just like talking to people and everyone being on the same footing, which is what was good about Twitter in the first place, and which is what now is bad about it. Blue Sky is like that. But if you don't like that kind of thing, maybe some of the other websites are better. Maybe Discord's better for you. Maybe, there's loads of stuff, but just find the ones that work for you. YouTube chat. Come and write something in the YouTube chat. Or Twitch chat. They're not. I'm again apologize that Twitch isn't working yet. I'll get it working for next time. Yeah, these things are important. So this is an example. Sign up to this. Sign up to something. Get involved some way. Just talk to trans people. You might be like, oh, but what? How do I organize about trans rights? You don't need to. Just talk to trans people, and it'll start happening naturally. And this is one thing I wanted to talk about as an example. So let me just get up a thing. Give me one moment. Let's see. I'm trying to keep my stress levels to absolute minimum while I'm doing this, so I'm feeling very chill. My heart rate's probably like 59 or something. So, one example I want to get. Can I safely share this without it revealing all my information? Yes. Why has it got that in there? Oh, piece of shit. Yeah, maybe that'll do. No. Sorry, I'm just trying to delete this weird tag on the URL. Is that going to work? Yes, okay, excellent. So, this is an email from The Trans Agenda by Lee Hurley. So, full disclaimer, I've known Lee via Twitter for a while, and we've interacted a bit. I'm kind of guilty of being a bit over liberal with the word friend. I would say Lee's my friend, but maybe he wouldn't say the same thing for me. I don't know much about him at all. We've never met in real life. We've never talked on the phone. We've interacted on Twitter in a political sense and probably some jokes, and that's it. I'm sure I wouldn't be invited to his wedding. I don't know if he's already married. I don't know what his sexuality is. I don't know much about him at all, and we're certainly not sponsored by him, and he is... Well, I was going to say he's not sponsored by me, but I do donate to his Substack. One of them. I don't know. Something. But that's just because I think the service is good and I want to support it. This is an example of what I want to get across in general to people, what we can do. Okay. So Lee is just, as I'm sorry for saying this, Lee, a normal person. He's not like some billionaire or, owner of some huge company, or, well, he might be a super genius, I don't know, but he's just a normal guy. And one of the things he is apparently good at is reading the news and summarizing it. So here he goes. Like, this is, and I'm sorry for just directly sharing his thing. You should definitely subscribe to this. So it goes out. Might as well just do his advertising for him. Goes out early for subscribers, but it's free. So you can just sign up to this. It's on Substack. I think it's got it here somewhere. I don't know. LeeHurleysubstack.com. Yes. Okay. So you should go sign up to this because it's useful news. But what this is it's just a service where he just reads all of the news and then finds all the stuff about trans people and then writes it down in a non-bullshit way. So, for example, this news story. Trans teens begged Wed Streeting not to ban puberty blockers week before. From the Metro, you can read the original article here, and he's got a little summary here explaining what's going on. But basically all the anti-trans and pro-trans stuff in the last week. Just information, and it's just written in a way that isn't pointlessly inflammatory or misgendering people or, that kind of stuff. Just realistic and factual. This is what the newspapers are saying. And you might be like, okay, so what? Like, ChatGPT could do this for me. It's literally just some person reading the news and writing it down. Yes, but this is a valuable resource for me. Like, I learned about some of this stuff. There's this, some of these things would never reach outrage Twitter. Councillor quits Labour over puberty drugs ban. Exeter, oh God, I can't read. Exeter councillor Zoe Hughes has left Labour, criticising its indefinite ban on puberty blockers for under 18s, calling it harmful to the transgender community. That's like a bit of news. If the gender critical person quit, it'd probably be on the front page of the Times and we'd all have to talk about it. But then when this isn't good news, but this is positive. This is someone standing up for trans people, making a scene about Labour. You could go and write an article about this. Maybe you could go and, if you're a journalist, you could go and talk to, or want to be a journalist, or someone with a blog. You could go and find Zoe and try and have an interview with her. Maybe you wrote a YouTube channel. I personally wouldn't have known about this. And maybe you're like, Katie, you're a fucking loser. Everyone knows about this. I feel like my finger's on the button with a lot of these things. I didn't know about this one. I knew about all of the anti-trans ones, but not always about some of the pro-trans ones or neutral ones or not Times front page stuff. This is a useful resource. This comes out. This not only can this educate you vaguely what's going on in the world. It might be something that you really know about and you're like, oh, I can contribute to this. I can write an article about this. I can do a YouTube video about this. And the point is, I'm not just like super bigging up the trans agenda by Lee or super bigging up Lee. Lee's great. The trans agenda is great. But the point is this is just a thing that Lee is good at and he does. Maybe there are things that you're good at that you can do and that would benefit us. This is like a resource for the trans community. And it's not like the golden resource. It's not the only resource. And in fact, if your skill is like Lee's, reading the news and writing it down, there's no reason why the transgender has to be the only one. Maybe you don't like his summaries. Maybe you can speak French and you can do it in another language. Maybe you've got a more chatty style that appeals to people of your demographic or whatever, if you're 17 or something. Like, what I'm trying to say is this is just a thing he is good at and he can do and he does it, and it's now good for all of us. And what we need to do is support this by, if it's interesting to you, subscribe to it. If you have the money, support him to do it financially, which is great. Share it with other people. This is one of the resources we have. Become aware of it, but also You can do that with the things you already know about, but you can do that with the things you're good at. You might think like, oh, I'm not good at anything. And I said to Lee before this, like, can I talk about this? And I don't want to just say you're just some person who writes down the news, because that kind of dismisses it. And he was like, that is basically what I do. Maybe you're someone and you're like, oh, you know, what the hell am I good at? All I'm good at is like drawing like cartoon pictures, or all I'm good at is writing music, or that's useful. Like I'm shit at drawing cartoons, and I draw like some political cartoons, and they get thousands of views, and people say they find them really useful. Maybe that's what you're good at. Maybe all you're good at is painting Warhammer, but maybe you have like a way you could paint some trans thing, or you could talk to other trans players of the game, or I don't know why I keep talking about Warhammer. I saw it in the chat a few times. But there might be some skills you have. And some of them, like one of my skills is I'm good at talking. I've been monologuing for like a whole hour already. I'm like halfway through the topics I want to talk about. I'm good at talking. I'm good at arguing with people. I'm good at talking to people who are trying to intimidate me and not being intimidated by them. I'm good at pinging off insults and not being affected by them. And so that's what I do. And you might be like, oh yeah, but I don't want to be in a public eye. Great. Do you know what I'm really bad at? Behind the scenes stuff, where you like, you know, talk to someone one-on-one and, you know, communicate some idea with them, or talking to politicians in a way that isn't abrasive. Or I'm not very good at reading scientific papers and translating them into things that everyday people would understand. I'm not good at finding scientific papers. I'm not good at... There's loads of stuff I'm not good at, so I just don't do it. And I kind of feel like, oh, I need to do all these things because, you know, people are watching my show and I need to experience... Maybe someone else is out there thinking, oh, I'm really good at like reading scientific papers and communicating them in a way that other people can understand, but I don't want to be on YouTube. I don't want to be in a public eye. I don't want people knowing my name. Well, that's amazing. Start an anonymous blog or something, write it down somewhere, send it to me, send it to all the other big trans activists, get in some Discords, get in some YouTube chats, make a Blue Sky, and do what you're good at and contribute. Literally, whatever it is you're good at, you're going to think, oh yeah, but it's rubbish. No one needs this. I'm not very good at it anyway. Shut up. Yes, we do need it. And yes, you're good at it. And even if you're mediocre at it, like, okay, maybe your exact same skill is what I do, or what Lee does, or what someone else is already doing. So, maybe you're exactly the same as me, but 10% worse. Some people don't like me. So, like, I'm annoying. Some people are going to find you first. Some people are going to want to hear it from more than one person's point of view, and they'll hear mine and they'll hear yours. And even if they're similar and they're informed by each other, like, this is creating a community. These are, like, important... like this is what we need to do to create like some positive movement, some positive momentum, and like help each other out and all share things with each other. I like something I've said for a long time is anything I do in the name of trans rights is free for you to steal. If you see me making an argument and you want to say it on your show, or say it to your friends at the pub, or write it on a t-shirt, or paint it on a Warhammer model, like whatever you want to do with it, just fucking do it. You don't need to credit me. If you see one of my shitty cartoons, actually I should bring that up because you might be like, what the hell is she talking about cartoons? So I have a political cartoons account called Katie's Shit Cartoons. It was on Twitter, it's now on Blue Sky, and I draw these absolutely abysmal stick men that try and communicate an idea. So here we have a trans person saying, you want to remove rights I have today. And then the gender critical says, hyperbolic as always, no one wants that. I'm sure everyone's had this little interaction. And they're like, this, by the way, all of these are based on a real event. I actually had this actual conversation, not quite they posted through my door, but someone posting it on their timeline. So then they say, the flyer you just posted through my door says, our political party will remove trans people's rights. And they're like, seems sensible to me. Why do they fucking do this? Anyway, this is what I'm trying to communicate with these cartoons. I'm fucking shit at this. If you see this exact cartoon, you're like, wow, that's a good idea. oh, but I don't know if I want to do the same thing because I don't want to steal from Katie and she might be upset and I don't fucking steal it from me. I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone else, but I think a lot of trans activists would generally be happy if you take their ideas and build on it, share them, rewrite it. If you're a good artist, but you're like shit at ideas and not good at politics, just steal all my cartoons and draw them well. Like, even if you do that and you make money off it, that's great. Like, that's cool. What I care about is us having rights and having a future. Like that's what I'm involved in this for. So, you know, we don't really want to support these kind of activist leech types that you do see sometimes, but I don't think we really get many of those in the trans community. I think we're all too desperate for that for that kind of situation. You know, you start getting these grifter types in when activist stuff starts actually making real progress. But you know, you've always got to be on the lookout for grifters, but you're not one if you're worrying about it. And I'm sure you've got a skill you can help us with, and just start doing it and tell people about it. Katie's good cartoons when when I get better at drawing. I'm actually not bad at drawing, but like sometimes you just want to fire out an idea, and like I don't have like a special tablet-y pen thing that you can do good drawings with, and so I just use Microsoft Paint, the classic one, not the new shit Windows 11 one, and I just draw these things because I don't know, it's a good way of communicating an idea. I think sometimes the simpler cartoons are the best ones. But yeah, so if you want something you can do, if you want to go away from this stream feeling positive, what can I do? What you can do is have a think about what you might be good at. What is what is the thing you are least shit at? If you're too negative about yourself, what is your least bad quality? And if your least bad quality is like drawing pictures, there are trans organizations that want flyers. There are shit trans cartoonists who want their cartoons to be drawn in a better way. There are trans people who are trying to start their own like internet brandy thing who want artwork. Like I didn't do all this stuff. Kaylin Conrad did all of this amazing background because they're amazing at that kind of thing. They're actually amazing at everything to do with YouTube, and you should definitely go and subscribe to their channel because they're good at script writing and analyzing media and all that kind of stuff that I'm not good at. But they're also good at art, and someone needed to do this. So yeah, I'm sure you're able to contribute in some way, and it will help. And what was also good about these like specific things is you don't get paralyzed by the fear. When you hear the news that maybe this state is going to take away driving licenses or something, you're like, crap, what the hell can I do for driving licenses? And you kind of redirect to that, and then the next day you read that something about nursing is, and you're like, oh, what can I do about nurses? And you're like pointers going in all these different directions. You don't really achieve anything. If you're like, well, I'm not really good at any of that, but what I am good at is writing letters to my MP in a way that might pressure them to listen. So start doing that. Write a letter every single day if you want. Like, do something, or write a template for other people and share it on an anonymous blog. It's stuff you can do. Right. I didn't know how many hours this was going to be. We're at the 1 hour line, but we're going to keep going. Everyone's still here. I'm still having a good time, and I've only got down like a third of my to-do list streams. So we'll see. We'll see what's going on. Yeah, people saying they love Kaylin. Yeah, if you don't know, maybe someone in chat can put Kaylin Conrad's YouTube in as a link or something. Mods, that's on you. You should definitely check out their stuff. I guess the disclaimer on that is we are friends and we have spoken on the phone. And every now and then I send Kaylin abusive drunk messages. So we're that level of friend. We never met in real life. I'm probably not getting invited to their wedding either, but I send them drunk texts. so that's something, you know, that's like stage 1 of friendship, isn't it? If you don't have someone to send drunk text to, then do you even have friends? I don't know. So who's this saying? Poggle Rebecca says, I wrote to my sorry to laugh at this. This is so bleak. I wrote to my MP once and he just subscribed me to his transphobic flyers. God, the fucking audacity of them. Yeah, we're going to talk about writing to your MP in a little bit. Actually, how soon are we going to talk about that? No, we're going to talk to that in a little bit, but we are going to talk about it. God, sorry, I'm a bit sniffly. I do have tissues. I'm going to pause the sound because this will be a nose blow. I hope you didn't hear that. This is another good thing about having a chill stream. I can just edit that out. Streamer, people here for the live stream, you got to see me blow my nose on the internet for the first time ever. I don't know what I used to do before. I just used to try and bear it. But now I am nose clear. Amazing. So, another thing I want to do. So that I want to try and focus the show on like positive things we can do, like start creating some momentum. The gender criticals in the UK have a lot of momentum. The anti-trans extremists in the US have an insane amount of momentum at the moment. But that doesn't mean they're going to win. That doesn't mean they're going to destroy all trans people. That doesn't mean they'll have momentum forever. It doesn't mean we can't have momentum. And once we start getting momentum up... God, did you actually hear the nose blow? I hope you didn't. Once we start getting momentum, they will start losing momentum because they are fueled by our suffering, and as we stop suffering, they will start panicking, which is another bonus of doing stuff. So another thing that I would like to do, and I've been hoping someone else would do for a while, and maybe they have, and if they have, please link me to it, and I want to know about it. But this is a good example of something we like. Well, I'm not necessarily good at this, but maybe I'll just start it and other people will like pick it up. What I would ideally like is some kind of fact check website like Snopes or one of those kinds of things, specifically for trans rights. One where you can be like, oh, they're talking about... Because sometimes it's like, you know, someone will say, oh, sex is just chromosomes, and that's such a common thing, and it's quite an easy debunk because you're like, well, here's an example of a cis person with the opposite chromosomes to what you'd think. But sometimes there are these really specific things where, like, you know, someone will be like, J.K. Rowling said that 80% of trans people detransition if you don't give them healthcare, and you're like, oh god, I know this is wrong. I mean, it's obviously wrong because J.K. Rowling said it. She's an idiot and a liar and an extremist. But you might be like, I don't remember what the specific debunk was. It'd be great if there was somewhere you could go, which is like, oh, here's the debunk of this argument. This is a common argument. This is where it comes from. This is the two papers it's based on. This is the debunk of the papers. You know, almost like Wikipedia, but for trans arguments. Like, it'd be great if it was like a community project. Yeah, Erin in the morning. So Erin is another person who is absolutely great. If you don't know Erin in the morning, so that's ERIN, Erin in the morning. You should definitely Google her, check her out. Is very US focused, which is great. Like, I'm kind of UK focused. She does touch on the UK and other countries, just like I do. I think that activism is her full-time job, which is amazing. So you should go and subscribe and support her if you can financially. I guess the disclaimer on that is she's also someone who I'd probably call a friend that she might not call me a friend back. I didn't get invited to her wedding. She recently got married, and it looked really amazing. I'm not begrudging that, by the way. We've talked a bit. She came on Transatlantic a couple of times. She seems like a great person, but I don't know her that well. We've just talked a bit. Oh, cat break. Poppy's still alive and kicking and doing great. She's getting older and grumpier by the day, but she's very happy. Though this morning we had another cat in the house because I got one of them special cat flaps where you can only enter if you have the chip, and it ran out of batteries and I didn't realise. I just walked downstairs and I was like, you're not Poppy. But But yeah, Poppy's happy and doing great. Anyway, yeah, me and Erin aren't like she's not sponsoring me. I don't think I pay for her thing. I can't remember. Sorry, Erin, if I don't. But Erin is great, and you should subscribe to Erin in the morning and follow Trans News. And yes, she does do this kind of thing that I'm talking about, where we want to compile sources. But I think it'd be great to have it as like a more community contribution thing with some kind of, like volunteer editors and that kind of stuff. But I do think that's quite a big project. That would be great to do if people can contribute to it. And maybe that's something I want to move towards. But I do think the first step and a much easier thing to do would be to have some kind of just list of all of the research and articles which we can use to back up our arguments. Because sometimes you're like, oh, what's that paper? Pardon me. Sometimes we're like, oh, what's that paper where it shows that, it's a meta-analysis of 5,000 studies and it shows that the detransition rate is 0.5%. That's kind of hard to find unless you know how to search for papers. But if it was just on a list somewhere, that would be great. And I know I've seen some other streamers have like lists of research articles, but usually they're not trans people themselves and they don't really keep them up to date and they can't be bothered. So maybe a good start would be that. So that's what I'm going to try and move towards first. In fact, an example of this is when I want to give someone, sometimes people are like, can you give me a bunch of research on trans people? I go for, let me just see if I can find this in real time. It's fine, doesn't need to be professional, I can edit it out. I usually type a comprehensive defense of trans people. Reddit. This is the only time I ever go on Reddit, is to click on this one. This is by Musicotic. I don't know. It's from 7 years ago. So it's obviously very out of date. But they wrote this. And there's a huge amount of each one of these is a paper. And there are a crazy amount of them. And there are so many of them, so much detail on this, that it's continued in the comments. This is a resource that I actually rely on, that someone spent a crazy amount of time on. I don't know if they've done a more advanced one. I don't know if they've updated it. I don't know who this person is. This may be one day deleted and then I wouldn't have backed it up. But, some of our resources are very spread out. I think this is decent. And this is the kind of thing it would be great to have in a more solid location that's not like a Reddit post. I don't want to steal their work, but I feel like they posted it publicly, so they probably want people out there knowing it. But yeah, this is the kind of thing we should be able to build on this and add more to it. So that's what I'm going to be thinking about for the next couple of weeks. If you've got any ideas on how to do that, send me a message on not Twitter, ideally Blue Sky DMs. You can also send me an email at katie.montgomery at, I guess I need to interrupt this just so algorithms don't pick it up. I don't know, Gmail, that one. Maybe I shouldn't even say that. That's my public email address. I'm sure it's fine. It's on my website. You can go on my website and click on the little box there. But anyway, if you have some ideas for this, let's do this as like a step one towards creating a general debunk site. Because I think that's the kind of thing I'm good at. Arguments. And collecting data is the first stage for writing arguments. And maybe you've already done this. Maybe you know someone who's already done it. Let's not try and reinvent the wheel. Let's try and build what's already there. This is something else I wanted to mention. Sorry. I am guilty of this. So if you feel like I'm calling you out, I'm also calling myself out. When a lot of trans people come out and they get past the first few hurdles in their personal life and they start getting part of the community and they learn a load of stuff, then they get into this kind of like righteous mode where they're going to solve the problems that are in front of them and they're not really engrossed in the community enough yet to have learnt from everyone else. They haven't been crushed down yet by the reality of transphobia. This is where you get these kind of like I'm not, I'm one of the good ones types will come out the woodwork. There'll be a new one, they'll appear, they'll get loads of attention from the right wing, then they'll be crushed and they'll disappear. But it's also where sometimes you get these like well-meaning, not I'm one of the good ones, but kind of they're ignoring what all the other trans people around them are doing, and they'll dive into things head first, they'll create a big scene, they'll constantly be the center of attention, and they'll say stupid stuff, and you're like, oh god, I wish this person would shut up. And everyone seems to want to make their own organization. They kind of want to be at the center of things. They think if I'm not doing it, then no one is, so I need to do everything. Like I did all of that, and it's annoying. One of the more annoying things they do is assuming that they need to reinvent the wheel, or they need to create their own organization or their own brand or whatever. It's like, you don't need to. There are ones already. I know you look around, you're like, right, okay, who's the big LGBT organization in the room? Stonewall. Mermaids. They're both shit. Okay. So I better make my own one then. And then you make your own one and it doesn't last, and you don't get any support from people who actually know what they're doing, and you start stepping on other people's toes, and yeah, it's just frustrating. So Vela's saying in the comments, honestly, being worried about this is one of the reasons I don't end up doing anything. Yeah, okay. So I totally hear that, and I don't want to crush anyone's motivation by saying this. I think if you're worrying about this, you're not the kind of person to do this. Because I didn't worry about this straight away, and then I suddenly realized it when I saw someone else doing it who was a little bit further behind me, and I was like, man, this is cringe. And then I started worrying about it, and I stopped doing it. But even so, I did these things. And I'm now here, and I'm better because of it. Sometimes people just have to make mistakes. It's the only way. And sometimes you need to make a mistake. Like, you've got to make a mistake, and you've got to fail, and you've got to annoy some people and step on some toes, get blocked by some people who you respect. Like, that's just part of it. If you keep going, you'll get into a good position. People will forgive you. Some people won't forgive you, and you'll just have to deal with it. That's fine. But I think you doing something is more important than you not doing something. If you go out there and you're like, you know what I know about trans people and nursing, and you go and write a blog, and then your first comment is from someone being like, you're all wrong, I'm a trans person and a nurse and everything is wrong. And you're like, oh no, I've done a thing. Katie says I should do a thing and it's rubbish, and now everyone thinks I'm an idiot. Firstly, don't listen to one comment. One comment is bullshit. Like, sometimes I get 100 negative comments and 1,000 good ones or whatever. Sometimes I get 100 negative comments and no good ones because people are more likely to write an angry comment. But then you still see there's a positive reaction to it overall. So that's something you've got to learn. But also, maybe you have written something garbage. Maybe you wrote something stupid. Okay. I mean, your first thing's probably going to be rubbish. I mean, my first stream was absolutely terrible. But you will only get better at it by trying. And rubbish is like, unless it's like maliciously bad. Unless you're like really writing, you're like, I'm a trans rights activist and I'm also a racist and a sexist and a homophobe. Like, unless you're one of those kind of fucking losers who are few and far between, at least you trying to do something and then realizing it's not great and deleting it and starting again and having a number 2. Then you've learnt something, you've contributed, you've made the world a better place. Don't stress about it. So that is a personal call out of Vela in the comments. But no, it's it's for everyone. Don't be tricked into inaction. And like, don't let a lack of confidence stop you. Like, look at these fucking people. Look at like James S's or whatever his name is. Like, the most incompetent, pathetic person. Like blatantly an idiot who has no, he's all just ego and pomp and like no substance at all. And he has the confidence to go on stage at what's supposedly an LGBT rights conference and speak on behalf of them. LGBT Alliance, it's just a load of dickheads. But like, these people are just pathetic, and they have the confidence. And you're worrying, oh, but I don't want to be one of these pathetic idiots like him. Like, if you're worrying about it, you're not. Do you think these people are self-aware? Absolutely not. If you're like worrying about things, then good. Like you should be self-critical to some amount, but you need to. If you're not doing anything, then you're too self-critical. You're living in fear too much, and you need to just fucking do something. I was worried about when I first started streaming, and I was just sitting there panicking, and I just clicked go and just dived in, and then there was like 3 people watching me, and I was like, "Ah!" But then I just made a shit job of it, and just got better next time. So just go for it. $2 from we love you, Katie. Thank you very much. I hope all is well. Most things are well. My life isn't perfect, but I'm generally pretty good. Thank you very much. Sorry if I've missed any other super chats, by the way. I have been trying to spot them. But yeah, anyway, right, let's move on to the next topic, because we're an hour and 20 in. I've still got a couple more things I wanted to mention. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, because I think this is another area which we're going to cover a lot over the coming weeks and in the coming videos, which is where I think we can actually do something and make a difference. Adam A says, be cringe, be free. Yes, that's the way. Like, I'm cringe all the time. Look at the state of me. I'm cringe city over here. But like, it's better to be cringe. No, wait, what? It's better to have cringed once than to never have cringed at all. There's something like that. But yeah, something we want to talk about. Something I want to talk about going forwards, because I think I'm just gonna. I need to stop thinking about doing a perfect take. Fuck off. Hang on. I'm having a drink. The joys of live streaming. See how unprofessional I am now? See how shit this is and how many people are watching? You can be the shit and write a blog and make a positive difference to the world. Yeah, anyway. So hang on a moment. Do I still have up the YouTube thing? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna start it for like the 15th time. Poppy's interrupting me now. Okay, we're gonna talk about healthcare. So this is a topic where I think we can make a difference in the UK, and probably in other places too. I know more about the UK, but it's something that I want to focus on, and I think this is like, there's a lot of areas where it's covered by like the Equality Act and the Equality and Human Rights Commission and all of these kind of groups where they have a lot of people in power, and it's very hard to move them and to move the needle. But I think healthcare is one where we can more move the needle, because it affects just our bodies and the public isn't so outraged by it. And certainly healthcare for adults is a much easier position to defend and very difficult for the gender criticals to like credibly attack. But it is somewhere where there's a lot of improvement needed. So something that's been happening more often recently, and that's happened to me, is GPs, general practitioners. So for anyone not from UK, that's like the doctor you see first. Have been saying no to prescriptions for trans people. And I don't just mean like you walk in and you say, oh, I'm coming out as a trans person, please can you give me hormones? And they're like, no, you need to go to the gender identity clinic. That is kind of bullshit, but that is the standard at the moment and has been for the last X decades. I'm talking about a situation which I've experienced twice now, where I went into my GP. This is, by the way, post GRS. I've gone through the entire of the GIC, gender identity clinic pathway, been discharged at the other side because that's what they do. You get to the end, you have all the stuff, all the medical interventions you need, and then they're like, right, we're writing you this prescription which is for the rest of your life. It's just for the hormones you need. They did that. I went back to my GP and I said, this is what they've told me to do, and the GP was like, yeah, that's great. And they just prescribed me every month, or whatever it was, every 6 months I think I was on. And then I moved house and I had a new GP, and I went into them and I said, oh yeah, I'm on this recurring medication. I need a repeat prescription of it. And I actually did both of the medications I need at once. So one is to do with trans healthcare, and one is to do with asthma healthcare. So I have like inhalers because I have asthma, and I've moved 10 times in my life or something, or more, less than 20. And every time I move, I go into the new GP and I say, can I have some more inhalers? Can I repeat my prescription? Sometimes it's the week after I move in because I've run out. Sometimes it's not for another 6 months. You just go and get your healthcare. So I did that with my trans healthcare. Went in and said, oh, can I have this repeat prescription of estrogen that I've been on for like 3 years now and that I actually need in order to live, basically. And the doctor I talked to, and she just was like, no. And I was just like, oh, what? Like, what do you mean no? And she's like, oh, we'd have to write to the gender identity clinic, and you'd have to go through that pathway. And I was like, I've already done that. Like, I've been through the whole system and been discharged, and I've been on this for like 3 years now. This was before the pandemic. And in the end, she's just like, no. And just kind of fought me on it. I was kind of so shocked because I've never really had a doctor say no to me before, which maybe puts me in a privileged position because I know a lot of people have, but it was a real shock to me. And I kind of panicked. I didn't really know what to say, but I knew that I ran out like that week. I'd left it a little bit late. I had like 5 days left or something, but I wasn't expecting it to be an issue. I was expecting to just walk in, tick a box, and walk out with 6 months worth of prescription, which is what I always normally do. But luckily I managed to summon my like middle class Karen energy, and I was like, well, I need it. Like, I need this prescription. And I don't even remember exactly what was said. I mean, this must have been like 2018 or 2019. And but she ended up being like, well, I guess we can talk to the practice manager, because I was like, well, I'm not going to go until I've got my prescription. I said that. And so she went out and like had a talk with someone and came back in a bad mood and was like, oh, we can renew it for 1 month. Which I just took because I don't like the confrontation, and it's very stressful, and like I was really horrible. And I just went to the pharmacy right next door and got 1 month of prescription rather than 6 months, and that was horrible and stressful. But I did manage to do it. But I think a lot of people wouldn't have I'm sure lots of people are much better at it than I am, but I think a lot of people are a lot worse at standing up for themselves than I am. And loads of people must go in, ask for it, be told no, and then they just walk out because they've just been told no by like an authority. Like a doctor tells you no. Like, what the fuck? So yeah, that happened to me, and it was so demoralizing. I then had to go in every single month rather than like. There's no reason why you need to go for every single month. The prescription lasts. The medicine they give you has a shelf life of like 2 years or something. There's no reason it needs to take that long, and at the time there wasn't any shortage of it or anything either, or not worse than normal. So I ended up renewing that, but then I also set up a private prescription because I just didn't want like the idea that the doctor could just say no to me. I was like that's terrifying. Like, it really scared me. Like, the idea of going without medicine, like, it controls so much in your life, like your hormones. It controls your mental health like completely, and your mood and your ability to like function in society. Like, it does not. That's just not for trans people, by the way. That is for everyone. That is why teenagers are moody dickheads, is because hormones changing is horrible and it makes you like unhappy. That's true for everyone, cis people too, if they have a hormone imbalance. But yeah, and it also affects your physical health. Like, it can affect your bone strength and how various organs in your body perform, and your like chance of cancer in the long term, like all kinds of things. So it's really serious. I'm in the fortunate position where I could afford private healthcare. I think private healthcare is a bullshit feature of society, and it should just be free by the state for everyone. But the reality is, you have to put on your own mask before you can help others. I wanted to have access to healthcare, and I had the money to do it, so I went for it. And I went with Gender GP, who I'm not sponsored by, and I've had issues with Gender GP before, which I've talked about publicly, but they are a service that I have used and they have worked for me. And yeah, so I had that as like backup. And then when the pandemic came, it was all kind of difficult getting hold of prescriptions, and then I moved house again, and then it was kind of difficult getting hold of them again, and the stress of like going to a GP and having to face someone who might say no again, it kind of put me off. So for a little bit I was just on a private prescription, and then I was like, right, I'm going to go back into the NHS and I'm going to get it back like on the NHS prescription, which is, you know, it's easier, it's less stressful, you don't have to pay such an amount of money for it, and it's just better to get it on the NHS. And I went in and I saw the GP for the first, like, I hadn't gone in for my asthma, I hadn't gone in for anything. I was so put off by GPs from that first experience. So when I'd been ill, I just avoided it. And I went back in and I was like, okay, so I've got this prescription, and he got it up on the screen. Like, I could literally just see it on the screen, the letter of them saying, you need to repeat this for the rest of this patient's life. And I was like, can I renew this prescription? I've been on private, and then I was on public, and then I switched to private for a bit, and I would like to go back on the NHS. And he did the same fucking thing. He was like, I don't know what to do. I think the first lady I talked to was probably gender critical. I think this guy was just panicking and deer in headlights, and he didn't know what to do, and probably hadn't had a trans patient before. And he just said, oh, maybe if you can get a letter from the GIC telling me I need to. It was literally on his fucking screen. And he was just like, and I was like, well, don't you have the letter there? And he was like, yeah, well, maybe we need another one. And I was just, man, it's just so demoralizing. So I just gave up. And I took another couple of months off, and then I went back and I saw a different person, and they were like, sorry. I went back, I saw a different person, and I started explaining it again. He was like, oh, so you used to be on the NHS for this, that I have this letter for, and now you're on private and you want to go back in the NHS? I was like, yeah. He was like, okay, that should be good for you. I was like, this is how easy it should fucking be. Like, utterly ridiculous. Sorry. Anyway, so I've experienced this, and I know some of you will have too, and it's a thing that apparently seems to be increasing in the UK, or at least we're hearing more about it. But they do actually, the NHS has to provide you this. It's a bit of a grey area, and doctors can oppose giving you healthcare if they're like opposed to it or whatever, which is completely bullshit. I know some people think that it should be people's right to do what they want or whatever. I just think it's completely bullshit. I think you should lose your job if you oppose to some healthcare on like moral grounds or immoral grounds. If you don't like trans people and don't want to give them healthcare, don't be a doctor. Like, go and clean toilets or something. You cannot be a doctor. If you're opposed to abortion, fuck off. You shouldn't be a doctor. If you don't want to give healthcare to gay people, don't give healthcare to anyone. Get a different job. Get a job where you don't have to interact with anyone who might be gay. Go and live in the forest and lick mold off the wall or something, or whatever you can do to survive, because you should not be in a healthcare position having control over people's lives. Because you do even hear sometimes more malicious stories where they'll waste your time, or lie about what prescription they're giving you, or waste your time sending you through mental health services or whatever. Anyway, that's a different thing. In the UK today, it's a bit difficult, but there are some things you can do if you're in that position. The first thing that you should do is don't get demoralized and give up for years like I did. Like, just, it's demoralizing, it's horrible. Come back, vent to your friends, your little support group, write it on Blue Sky or whatever you need to do, and pick yourself back up, and then go in and make sure you don't see the same person again, and ask to see a different doctor at the same practice. Like, the odds of you getting 2 in a row is lower than the odds of you having 1 in a row. And if you get a second one, try again. Just try and pick someone who you think sounds like they might be more supportive. You know, like maybe look through the website and Google all their names, or maybe one of them has like a you know, an LGBT flag badge, or you know, that kind of thing. Because you've just got to find someone who'll help you out, and then you just see them until you move or until they retire, and then maybe you've got the same problem again. But that's the first thing you should do. But there are, you know, some groups which are trying to offer support materials on this kind of thing. So let me just find out this link that I was going to show you all. Super professional. Okay, right. I don't really need to hide it. I can just show it on the screen. So this is another group that... Actually, let's click on this one first. No, let's finish this bit. Okay, so there's a bunch of groups which, you know, have some materials on this. So here's an article by a group called Transactual. Again, I'm not sponsored by Transactual. I'm not part of them or anything. I know some of the people through Twitter and stuff, but again, I've not been invited to any of their weddings or whatever. So I haven't talked to them. I don't even know all the people who are part of these groups. But generally, I think Transactual are on the right page, and I think they're pretty decent. So they have an article here called "My GP is refusing to prescribe my HRT. What can I do?" And like they're saying here, you know, this resource is for you if you're in the UK, you're over 18, and the gender clinic has written to your GP asking them to prescribe. So that doesn't cover everyone. You know, if you're 17, this help page isn't for you. It is kind of demoralizing. I always feel like whenever we give advice on these things, we're like, or not advice, but, you know, whenever we say, oh, okay, read this if you're over 18 and you're like a British citizen and you're, you know, like whatever, it just suddenly cuts off a load of people and like throws them to the wolves. But the reality is, if you're not these things, it is harder. But that doesn't mean that you still can't access healthcare. But at least this resource is one thing that will hopefully help a lot of people. It's just like a link I have on hand. So one of the things that Transactual is asking to do is for you to let them know. They can provide you with these support materials more directly. There's some stuff here like, you know, ask them, make your case, etc. And like they go on and explain some other stuff. But I think Transactual are a good organization for this, especially on this healthcare thing. So if you've had this situation, then I would come to this. I'll put this link in the description, and you should let them know via their form. So it's not the end of the line if the first doctor you see says no, and you can talk to some organizations that know about this. I mean, there are some others that have other support networks. But also, I personally think that we need to start making a fuss about some of this stuff. Like, where the gender criticals are winning is where they find something that's, you know, arguably a place for the law to get involved, and they make a huge fuss about it and chuck a load of money at it, and then the Times writes an article on it. And seriously, like, I don't know what percentage of those fail. 95 plus. That they've spent like £750,000 or something on Alison Bailey to just constantly hit her head against the wall and drop spaghetti out of her briefcase or whatever. Loads of these go nowhere. But every now and then they have one that does go somewhere. For example, the Keira Bell case, where they managed to ban trans healthcare for trans children for the first time. But like, we're in the right here, unlike the gender criticals who are always in the wrong, and always doing it for horrible reasons. Like, if you are a trans person in the UK, you should be able to get healthcare from the NHS. That's like what the NHS is about. That's what the law is on our side. So we need to start making a fuss on it. Like, if eventually, obviously, if your first doctor says no, you don't just want to go thermonuclear and like try and ruin their reputation instantly off the bat or something. Try and take them to court or something, because maybe they just need mild pressure, or maybe their colleague just needs to take over, or there's a lot of things. But I think eventually we're going to have to end up with some kind of test case or legal complaint or something, and when that happens, it needs to be the perfect one. It needs to be, a clean-cut case where it makes a big scene, and because currently some doctors are just being scared by the gender critical movement. They're not necessarily anti-trans, but they're not necessarily trans rights activists. They just they just want to do their job, and they just kind of get on, and then they've seen all these things. Are like, well, what if I get in trouble, or what if the Daily Mail writes an article about me? I just don't want to get involved. And a trans person comes in, it's like the one trans person who you've seen in like 5 years comes in, and they're like, oh, can you do my healthcare? And you're just like, no. Like, they're doing that because they're scared of the gender critical movement more than they're scared of us, and more than they're scared of the law. And we just need to flip that round. Like, we don't want to intimidate them. That's garbage. But we want them, their first thought to be, oh, I should be giving everyone healthcare, and if I don't, then that might be bad for my career. Rather than, oh, I shouldn't give trans people healthcare because I might get abused by the gender critical movement. Like, these kind of things are, they make more of a difference often than the laws. The gender criticals haven't managed to change the law. They're unlikely to change the Equality Act anytime soon, but they've managed to create a lot of people, or a lot of fear for a lot of people, into just starting to do garbage things anyway, and just like capitulating in advance. So yeah, I think this is another thing. If you're denied healthcare, try and resolve it. Go round it if you have to, and you can afford it. Talk to Transaxual and other trans groups, and share it if you have the moral strength. Like, if you talk to Transaxual, they can give you their support materials without you becoming on the front page of the Daily Mail. But if you're the kind of person who wants to fucking go for it, then maybe eventually we'll need the person to do that. And if you're thinking, maybe that's me, just bear in mind that it might not be you, because if you came out yesterday and you haven't listened to what anyone else is saying, and you start making a big scene, you might be stepping on some toes. Oh, that's the wrong way to describe it. Not stepping on some toes. You might be making mistakes that you wouldn't need to make if you talked to people who had already been doing this for 10 years. And that's not saying, oh, I know better than you. No. It's very easy to think you've got it sussed out, to make a mistake, and to just fucking destroy you. It is very ruthless. So just, I don't know. It's about balancing. Don't have no confidence, but don't be overconfident. And whichever one of those two you're worrying about is probably the opposite of what you need to do. If you're like, oh, I'm worried about making a scene and being too confident, you probably need to step it up. And if you're like, oh, I worry I'm not doing enough, I'm not being enough of a loudmouth, then maybe you should worry a bit more about being an overego, because that's probably what I need to do. I don't know. I worry about both of them. Anyway, that's kind of a rambly finish to that little bit. What else do we have on the agenda that I want to talk about? Well, let's see what the chat is saying. How's everyone doing? We're coming up to 2 hours. Everyone's still alive? Still got like 400 people here. How do I get SRS from the NHS? I get prescriptions from my GP, but there is no word on SRS, says Evelyn R. So SRS, or GRS as I call it, because I don't really like various code names, doesn't matter. Genital surgery. You can get it on the NHS. Certainly if you're trans woman, or you're wanting to gain a vagina. That is one. I don't know so much about... I don't even know what the word is now. I don't know the surgery that trans men sometimes get is even called. Fucking hell. I did know that. That's totally slipped my mind. Anyway, I do know about surgery for trans women. and people who may want similar surgery on the NHS, you need to push for it. You need to like if you've got HRT from your GP but you haven't gone through the gender identity clinic, you need to ask your GP to refer you to a gender identity clinic. And it's going to take fucking years if you're just starting that queue now. If you're already gone through the gender identity clinic, you need to contact them and just explicitly say it. I want SRS, GRS, genital surgery, whatever. And you need to push. You need to just tell them that. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, well, maybe we can get you to talk to her. Yeah. Just be like, yes, when can I have the date? And if they don't give you a thing, just tell them again. Phalloplasty. Thank you very much. Fucking hell. Yeah, I did know that word, I swear. Vaginoplasty. That's the alternative. Yeah, I should have said the proper words for it. Anyway, that's what you need to do. It takes time to go through that system. If you've already gone through the gender identity clinic process and you're at the point where you can ask them for genital surgery, from there, it's still probably a couple of years away, or at least it was when I was at that stage. But there is other things you can do in the meantime. If you are relying on the NHS, or you're looking at a private place which does penile inversion surgery, which is one of the forms of vaginoplasty, then you need electrolysis to remove all of the pubic hairs in that region, and that takes fucking forever. So day one, tomorrow morning, call up the gender identity clinic and say, I want this surgery. And then straight away call up an electrolysis place and be like, I want electrolysis hair removal. Because those two things can happen, those two processes can happen at the same time. When I wasn't sure if I wanted to go private or go to the NHS, and I went and had my consultation with the NHS, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll be able to refer you for electrolysis hair removal as well. The waiting list for that is 6 months, and then that's going to take 1 year, and then you can join the queue for the surgery, which will take 1 year, and then it'll happen. I was like, okay. So basically with anything, like general advice with any trans healthcare, if you're like someone who's watching this and they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to come out, I don't know what I want, I don't know if I'm a trans person or not, my advice is get in all the queues now. If you're a trans person who's come out and you've been out for a while and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want genital surgery or not, get in the queue now. Because if you get to the front of the queue and you still don't know, or you've decided no, then you can just drop out. You can just be like, actually, no, I don't want it. Or actually, I'm not sure, I'm going to wait a little bit more. And you haven't taken a spot for anyone else. Because now, as soon as you drop out, the next person just comes up. You're not wasting other people's time. And some of these queues are years long. If you aren't sure now, in 3 years' time, you probably will be. So my advice is just get on it right now. If you're considering you might come out as trans in the next year, the next 2 years, join the gender identity clinic queue now. Because then maybe by the time you've decided, you can either call them up and be like, lol, I'm not trans, get fucked, I'm a cis person after all. Or, more likely, you'll be like, oh, I'm so glad I got in this queue 3 years ago because now I'm halfway through it. That's what I'd advise. I hope that is useful. By the way, I ended up going private. I think the NHS probably does a really good job. Lots of my close friends have had the NHS one. For me, the big decider was that the NHS was like, it's going to be like 2 years away. And then a spot opened up at one of the private places I was considering it was a bit terrifying. It opened up in like 6 weeks' time at that time. It was a pretty crazy moment for me, actually. I went to Korea with my brothers, and we had this like crazy long flight via Thailand. Got really drunk on the plane. The guy who I sat next to tried to sexually assault me. It was a bit stressful. My brother got so drunk he threw up. we got off the plane. We're in Korea. It's like 35 degrees. It was 7 a.m. Hadn't really slept any of the time. Kind of stressed, hungover as shit, still drunk. Then we had to wait like however many hours till 5 p.m. We had to wait like 10 hours or whatever till we could check into our hotel. And then we met our other brother and we're like, what do we need to do? We need like reset our body clocks. Let's go out. We hadn't seen each other in ages. Went and got drunk again. So, got blasted, went back to the hotel, went to sleep, and then I woke up like dazed and confused, hungover and drunk, like 6:30 a.m. Korea time. Okay, and I like looked at my phone, and one of my friends was like, "A space has opened up for this person. Book it now." And I was like, "Oh, when is it?" She was like, 6 weeks time, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like, it's quite a big decision to make. Full stop. 6 weeks is quite short notice, and I was not in a good state, and I like had this little meltdown, and both my brothers woke up like hangover as shit, and they were like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know about, might go to this place, and they were like, Anyway, I went for it. Good decision. It worked out. Yeah. And yes, for people asking, that was South Korea. Though I did go to the border with North Korea, which was quite cool. And I bought some alcohol made in North Korea, which, if you've ever been to my house, you have experienced. And it tastes like petrol. It's probably of dubious health qualities. Yeah. Just seeing what else the chat is saying before we move on. Everyone seems to be doing okay. So someone here says, Alyssa's saying, I've been having trouble getting a new dilator. Oh, it just dropped off the top of the chat. Hang on, let me see if I can find it on the other thing, because I wanted to respond to that. So Alyssa's saying, I've been having trouble getting a new dilator, even following the vendor's instructions on getting providers in the Veterans Health Administration to order it. Yeah, it is. Dilators are very specific and kind of difficult. Like, difficult to get the perfect one. I mean, I guess it's very trivial to find dildos. But they're not always of the medical grade and purpose and stuff that you want. I can't really give advice on that. I have bought some things from various companies, but just for that, the ones that I was given by the doctor ended up being the best. Maybe I can do a shout out. If you message me, I can do a shout out on Blue Sky or something. By the way, that is the thing. That's another community resource that I can provide. If you have some general trans question like that, like where do I get dilators from? That is the kind of thing that the trans community as a whole knows. If you have a big enough platform and you say, where do I get these from? Someone will tell you in like 1 hour. If you know trans, like a group of older trans women, they'll all know. And it's like community knowledge passed down. But if you don't have that platform, or you're new or whatever, how are you going to know this stuff? Well, ask me and maybe I can shout it out. I can do an anonymous shout out. I do that quite a lot for various things. I'm sure that other trans people with a similar platform size to me would do the same thing. There's ways of supporting each other. Mario has asked, do I know when I'll be on the line or talk heathen? Yeah, so currently my schedule works out best. I'm free on Wednesdays, so I'm going to do my own show on Wednesdays. Some Sundays I'll have free, so I might be able to do some of the line stuff. Maybe even talk heathen. I haven't talked to talk heathen in a little while. I burnt out pretty hard from all of it, so I don't know. We left on good terms, but also I was kind of lame because I just kind of couldn't respond to anyone for a month or so. Anyway, I think all the people involved in all those orgs are great, and I'd work with them again. I don't know. I'm going to see how it goes. I'm going to do this show for a bit and mix it in with my hobbies and my work and my family life, and then see how much energy I have. And I would love to. I just love arguing with people on call-in shows. It's so good. It's just really fun. So hopefully we'll see. Oh, Liz is saying the vendor site makes no mention of trans people at all. Yeah, that's probably because if they said it was for trans people, they'll get a load of abuse and they would be shut down from selling in some countries and blah 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 blah. Soul Source. Yeah, I've heard of that. Can't recommend, but I might have one. I don't even know. Yes. Yeah, it was great to see some conversation about that in the chat. Let's see what else I wanted to talk about. Because there is definitely a couple more things before we call it a day. Oh, come on. Where am I looking? Here. I have a list. Right, so I mentioned it earlier, and it's something I want to talk about. So the next thing that I want to talk about is just writing to your MP. So it's another one of these things that you hear people say, and they're like, you know, organize, community, talk to your politician, and you're like, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. And then 3 years later, you've still never done it. I'm quite guilty of that. But I personally am going to make more of an effort to engage with my politician personally going forwards. This year, 2025, New Year's resolution. We're going to build a community here. We're going to organize with each other and help each other out. And we're going to talk to our MPs. That's what we're going to do on this channel. A lot of people out there, you have gender critical extremists, cis supremacist knobhead MPs. Lots of you have conservatives who do not give a fuck about women or trans people. Lots of you have, you know, Labour MPs who blindly support West Streeting. Whatever. There aren't many openly supportive MPs for trans rights in the UK or the US, or any other country. But that doesn't mean it's not worth it. MPs are, most of them, people. No, they're all people, and yeah, some of them are like, you know, J.K. Rowling fan 88 on Twitter, and you're never getting through to them for sure. But you can still be annoying as fuck. Like, some of them are true believers, but most politicians, certainly right-wing ones, are not really true believers of anything. You know, certainly, like, look at all the fucking Republicans in charge at the moment. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, none of them believe in anything. They just say whatever they can to get popular and to get money and to get power. And that is true of a lot of politicians in general. That's like, you know, good people generally don't end up being politicians because good people don't want to control other people's lives. And it kind of selects for grim, attention-seeking, power-hungry weirdos. It's probably like the worst thing to say when I want to influence politicians, but it's true world over. To some degree, there are a lot of good politicians too. Some of my best friends are politicians. Actually, that's not true. I know some, but anyway, I think even if you end up with some wacko cis supremacist, you can be annoying to them. You can constantly engage them, and if they are a true believer, then it'll be hard to get through to them. But lots of them are just saying this like, I agree with everything J.K. Rowling says, just because it's politically convenient for them. And if you start being a thorn in their side, if you start being annoying as fuck, like they think, oh, okay, I could write this anti-trans thing in order to get attention and likes from the worst people on earth, then they might be like, oh, but that fucking trans organization's going to show up at my office next time I have a thing where they can come, and they're all going to talk to me, and they're going to be so annoyed. I just don't fucking care. Like, fuck it. Like, I'll say something else inflammatory instead. You know, I'll talk about how climate change isn't real or the moon landing was fake or something. Like, you can be annoying. Being annoying is a real strategy. It's fucking annoying when people are annoying. It stops people wanting to do things. That, like, if you have a worst end of MP, that is still valuable to be annoying. It's also valuable to issue your complaints. So if there's any analysis on this or Freedom of Information Act, or they're told things, or, you know, it can be like, wow, this person got so many complaints it shut down their email servers. wow, this person has ignored 300 letters from trans people in their time, or, these things can be the news articles on themselves. But also, that's like 5% of them are, wackos who fucking hate trans people, or who, are so far right wing that they aren't going to listen to you at all. Most of them, even the like dedicated conservatives and the Keir Starmer defenders, most of these people are in this lame grey area in the middle where they don't know any trans people. They've never interacted with a trans person. They don't really like trans people. They kind of think we're a bit yucky, but also that's based completely on their own stereotypes because they watched Ace Ventura once and that's it. And if you go in and you're like, hello, I am a trans person. I'm a constituent. I might vote for you. Doesn't matter whether you would or not. This issue is affecting me. Hello, I'm a real person. Next time they think about trans rights, they will remember you. And if you go in and you start shouting and screaming at them and telling them they're scum of the earth or something, that's what they'll remember. And that will influence them, whether you want it to or not. Politicians are like, the ultimate respectability politics example. I mean, that's what it is, isn't it? That's what politics is. It's all like this respectability bullshit. But if you go in and you just try and connect with them as a human, even if it feels like they didn't really listen to you, they've still experienced you as a person. And that is how we win people over long term. And if, like, you're like, oh, what's the point? I'm just this one person. What can I do? If you go in and talk to them, and then someone, like, there are hundreds of trans people who live in your constituency, and if, like, 5 of them go in over the course of a month or two, then they're going to be like, wow, there's quite a lot of these people, and they seem quite concerned for their future, and they all kind of seem like normal. And then when they have Kemi Badenoch being like, we should eradicate trans people from public life or whatever, they'll be like, well, I'm not, I'm a conservative, so I'm not really going to publicly shoot her down. I'm not going to, like, take a stand on an issue. But the ones I've met are kind of fine. So they might even just, if there was a vote, they might follow the party line. But they're not going to, like, so much politics is behind closed doors. And they're going to be like, this issue isn't really winning voters. It's kind of lame. I know it's going to affect someone who I've met who seems reasonable. That kind of stuff, it does influence them. Like, the reason the gender criticals are making so much political grounds is because they have enough money to have full-time lobbyists who are in Parliament all the time, like Grimer Wormtongue, like Grimer Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, who whispers in the ear of the king and gets him to do things that he wouldn't do otherwise. The gender criticals have full-time lobbyists who do that to MPs all the time. And if you're an MP who knows nothing about trans rights, yet every single week you get a little dose of that kind of nice person who you see sometimes, who smiles at you every time in the corridor, they, every time they can, be like, oh, don't forget to vote against trans people's human rights. You're like, well, they seem quite reasonable. I don't really know anything about it, and seem nice. I don't see why I wouldn't support them. But if they also met you and you're like, this affects my future. These gender criticals, they might seem polite on the surface, but they are trying to, they're trying to do horrible things. They're trying to take away my healthcare. They're trying to take away rights I need to function in society. They'll be like, oh, okay. So, I do think that's useful. But also the other end. So we've talked about the 5% crazies. We've talked about this middle block. And I swear, it is most people. Most people on Earth do not know fucking anything about trans people. They've never met a trans person. They don't think about us at all. They do not fucking care. That is most people on Earth. They have a slightly negative perception of trans people, and that's it. And if they met you in the pub, in the street, whilst they're doing their politician things, and you just talk to them, they'll be like, oh, that person was normal. And when they just meet one of you, they'll probably do that thing that everyone from majority groups do, where they're like, oh yeah, there's trans people, but Katie's quite nice. Like, she's one of the good ones. But if they meet like 5 of you, over the course of a year, they have to talk to like 20 different trans people. They can't just be like, oh, yeah, well, I've only ever met 20 trans people in my life, and they were all one of the good ones. It'll start breaking down their preconceptions. Like, something that I've said quite a few times is, I think meeting a trans person at the pub and having a 1 hour conversation does way more damage to the gender critical narrative than millions of dollars of lobbying and front page articles on the Times can do positively for them. Like, we can unravel years of propaganda in 1 or 2 conversations. Sure, if you're a true believer, wacko, cultist, J.K. Rowling fan, then, you know, literally no amount of evidence can change your mind. They've completely lost their mind. They're beyond reason and beyond hope. That's like 5% of people at most. Most people are going to change their minds to some degree. They're not going to swing all the way from, like, you know, defending Boris Johnson to, like, you know, voting for socialism or whatever. But they're gonna have some kind of preconception about trans people, and it's going to be broken down a bit. And if we just break down enough people's just a little bit and make enough difference, it will shift the whole thing a bit, and then they'll start listening to us more. I really think that meeting your MP, writing to them, is important. And if you write them an angry email, maybe you're good at writing angry emails, do what you're good at. But if you're one of these people who's good at playing the game and respectability politics and, you know, sounding middle class or whatever, do it like that. Go and meet them. Go and have a conversation. Like, if you're not good at that and you're really good at writing offensive signs and shouting and protests, fucking do that too. Go and stand outside their office. Make some paper coffins and, you know, like those trans kids have been doing outside Wes Streeting's office. That's good too. We need all of these things, and there's no point in criticizing it. If you look at past human rights movements, like most famously the civil rights movement in the USA, like, everyone likes to pick their little thing and be like, well, actually, the only way that they, you know, black people got rights was because they were respectable and they played the game of the liberals. That's what some people will say. And then other people will be like, well, the only reason they got rights is because, you know, the people who were on the, what's the word? Not action. What's it called where you, like, go on the streets and do stuff? Fucking hell. What is my brain doing today? Some people will say the only way that anything got done was because of the people, you know, like setting fire to stuff or creating protests and blocking the streets. The thing is, though, same with the suffragettes. The suffragettes invented the mail bomb. They threw an axe at the prime minister. Way brutal stuff that we absolutely should never do, because it's like literally just terrorism. The suffragettes did terrorism, but they did the full range of stuff. Like, they did these big acts like walking in front of the king's horse, but they also played the game, and they did the first, like Malcolm X versus MLK. It needs the full range. It doesn't need the illegal stuff. That's not what I'm advocating for at all. But protest is an important part of democracy, and standing outside a politician's office and holding a sign that says, you know, Wes Streeting is harming trans children's future or something, that's good. If you are good at writing letters, you should be doing that. If you're good at protesting, you should be doing that. You might be good at one of those things and be like, everyone's good at this. They're not. Like, I find protests kind of intimidating, but I'm not intimidated talking to, you know, random conservative shithead influencer. And maybe for you, it's the other way around. So just do what you're good at. Yeah, okay, so this person, an entropy fan, saying, respectability politics do not win wars of attrition, numbers do. And how many transphobes are willing to blah 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 because someone has right, okay, that is true. Respectability politics on its own will not win anything. You don't win by playing their games, because their games are bullshit and set up specifically to harm us. But it's one of the many tools. There are some politicians who genuinely know nothing about trans people, and as pathetic as it is, will get offended if you go and just say it like it is. But if you walked on eggshells with them, and that's what you're good at, and you're good at talking to them on their, you know, rich, privileged terms, they might listen a bit. And that cannot be the only thing we do. I'm not saying stop protesting. I'm not saying stop being rude to them on Twitter. I'm rude to people on Twitter all the time. I think protests are good. I think, direct action. That's what I was trying to say earlier. Some of this stuff is just important. I mean, it's just part of all civil rights movements, but we need the whole range, and you should do what you're good at. That's what I'm trying to say. As long as it's legal and safe and sensible. But yeah, I do. This just ties into one other thing I wanted to comment on. This might be the last thing. So let's do a news story. So there is this article. So this is about. Oh goodness, why have you zoomed in so much? That's interesting. This is where my share isn't super great, is it? Let's see. My background is Pokemon. Get over it. Oh, mate. Stop fighting me, Windows. So maybe I should have the comments and stuff on the right-hand side. Because there's all this rubbish here. Anyway. Let's cover this article. So, this is really sad. Warning for anyone who doesn't want to talk about dying. So anyway, trans student laid undiscovered for 2 days. Harlow College student Emma Al-Rabai, sorry if I got that wrong, was found dead at her flat in June 2024. Body of an 18-year-old trans woman lay undiscovered for 2 days in her flat. An inquest is heard. So she was originally from Saudi Arabia, and she fled here in order to come out. It says here the emergency services were called by a friend who said that she had been talking about ending her own life and had not answered her phone or message for days. The senior coroner for Essex recorded a verdict of suicide. She told her GP in Harlow that changing her gender in Saudi Arabia could result in prison or death, so she had come to the UK as a separated migrant, so on her own, so her family didn't support her. She told the doctor her family would not accept her trans identity and sent them a WhatsApp message when she arrived in the UK before deleting the app. Her family were made aware of the inquest but did not attend. So their daughter left her country fearing for her life. They cared so little about her that they didn't even bother to turn up to an inquest on her death. Like, really bleak. This stuff does happen the world over, and it's really horrible. This poor woman ended her own life because she, didn't feel supported. Really bleak. Horrible news article, and I'm, sorry for her and everyone who knew her and loved her. This isn't quite what I want to talk about, though. I don't want to just move on to some nonsense after this, but I was reading this article and, feeling for her, and it just, it strikes a chord every time you see this, because everyone knows trans people sometimes come out and lose all their friends and family and their jobs. There are trans people in every country in the world, including countries where there's the death penalty for it, like Saudi Arabia. It's just horrible. But I was reading through this article, and I actually initially thought, wow, the BBC's covered this, and it's covered it kind of well. And then I got to this sentence that says, the court was told her birth name was bleh. I was just like, well, why have they put this in this article? Like, what's the point? The rest, they've got some information about what the coroner's saying. We know about the story. I think it's good they've covered it. They've covered it in a very factual, bland, like emotionless, kind of almost cold way, where they could say, they could have some facts in here. The BBC could do some research saying, like, oh, it's illegal to be trans in this many countries, and the trans suicide rate is higher in countries with less support, and people who aren't supported by their families are more likely to take their lives, and all these kinds of things, which would actually be useful context. But the BBC isn't great. Anyway, this article at least covered it in a neutral way. But there was that dead name line. I was just like, why do they always fucking do this? It's just so disrespectful and pointlessly confrontational. It's so like, what is the point in this? I looked up and I saw, oh, okay, it's written by someone called Jodie Halford. Okay, so I just Googled her, found her Twitter and Blue Sky, and I just wrote her a message, which I think was quite respectful and polite, considering the just how, what's the fucking point in this? It's so garbage. So I said, I wrote the same message on Blue Sky and Twitter. Said, can I ask what the point of dead naming her was? I don't know if you're aware, but it's very disrespectful and insulting. The BBC has such a poor track record of mistreating and openly lying about trans people. Is it internal policy to do so, or did you just not realise? So I think I've been quite forgiving here. I could have been more. I didn't need to add the part where I said the BBC has a poor track record. But I think, this is slightly confrontational. But I mean, well, like 1 out of 10, 0.5 out of 10. I think I've been very, I'm stepping on eggshells here, and I think that should be apparent to anyone who has ever cared about trans people in the slightest in the past. I think, to be honest, I think that there will be trans people who are annoyed at me about how I wrote this, because it's like quite like, didn't you know that it's not very nice to be horrible to trans people and when they die? Like, it's a bit pathetic, but I think sometimes it's good to go in super like tiptoeing on eggshells, whatever. She did reply almost instantly on Twitter. And it's good we've got a screenshot, as you'll find out in a minute. She said, "Hi Katie, no disrespect was intended. It was a factual report of what was heard at the inquest, and the name Emma was born with was mentioned multiple times by the coroner. To omit it would not have been an accurate report of proceedings at the inquest." I think that's kind of bullshit. I mean, like, they probably mentioned lots of things. Like, we didn't hear the name of the parents. Presumably that was mentioned. Or, like, we didn't get the exact recorded date of death. Or, like, there's a lot of things that weren't reported. You didn't need... I'm sure it was said by the coroner. I mean, I'm not accusing her of lying at all, but, like, what's the point? It's not. It doesn't advance the story. It doesn't benefit anyone to know this. It's just sticking your nose into trans people's lives, not respecting them, just treating us like a spectacle or like a sideshow or whatever, rather than just as actual people. Like, why did we need that? We didn't need this. It doesn't add anything to the story apart from disrespect to trans people. So I said, disrespect was definitely communicated even if you personally didn't intend it. So this is a bit confrontational. Stepped it up a little bit. I did say, did they also mention her birthday or parents' names? There are loads of facts that don't need airing. This kind of thing comes across as cis people treating us as spectacles rather than people. It doesn't sound like it's explicitly internal with policy, but maybe that is implied. That's disappointing if so, but I guess it could be worse. I think that the majority of trans people will be frustrated on reading it. I think, personally, that's pretty eggshelly. I could have been less confrontational. I could have bent over backwards more, but this is not neutral. I am bending over backwards to be overly polite and like rein in my frustration. And I think most people would not have done so. Maybe if you disagree with me, you should let me know. Let me know in the comments. Be like, Katie, you're a confrontational dickhead and you're causing harm to the trans community. Let's hear it. Let's talk about it. I personally think that I had to take a breath and step back before writing something like this. So, should we see what she's replied with? No, we can't, because she deleted her Blue Sky and blocked me on Twitter. Like, that's just so tedious. Like, come on, really? So, here, someone called Madison Gant also replied, who is a journalist. I think Madison. Oh yeah, Madison's here in the replies. So Madison is executive producer at KMBC in Kansas City. I don't know what that is. It's probably a news thingy. But Madison is a journalist anyway, and a trans person. And she said, as a fellow journalist, what does that name add to this story? I read your story, and in this case, absolutely nothing. There might be times you could make a better case that it's relevant, but not here. That is very true. Like, this is even more respectful than me. Like, she has written that. It's true. Like, I know, part of ethical journalism is getting to the truth while avoiding harm. In this instance, reporting the name provides no benefit to the reader beyond titillating intrigue, while actively causing harm to the dead woman and those who cared about her, and also to trans people thinking, are they going to fucking do this when I die? Like, I mean, probably. It's just so pointlessly disrespectful, and like, yeah, it benefits nothing. It's just for peering cis people who just want to be like, oh yeah, trans people, oh, they're all weird and different, and she got blocked too. It's just like, it's just so frustrating. Like, I mean, this is the kind of thing where it's like, even if she never unblocked me, even if we just got like a one-line apology, or she just was like, oh yeah, sorry, that was a bit of an overreaction, or yeah, I agree, this isn't great, or just even something like that, and I'll just be like, okay, thanks. Like, I know the BBC shit, but we're not going to get some like grand apology or policy change or anything out of this. Maybe next time she writes an article about trans people, she could not do it. But just like, it's just so defensive over nothing. It's like, oh, it's just so frustrating. Like, what are we even supposed to do? You can't even. There's nothing you can do to appease some people. They just get so offended over nothing. And like, you could be like, oh, Katie, you're offended over nothing. All they did was write her name. Yeah, all you've done is pointlessly upset some trans people for no gain to anyone. Like, that's all that's done. So the neutral position would be to not bother with that. And then if you're like, well, I don't care about offending trans people, okay, but you have. So you can't then get offended when I very mildly push back. If you're like, I don't care who I offend, I'm just going to report the truth. I'm going to write the dead name of every trans person that I ever encounter. Okay. But then if I say, by the way, this is probably going to upset trans people. Or maybe if I say what I'm thinking, like, why the fuck are you doing this? This is so pointlessly disrespectful. It seems like you're a prick to me. Like, if you were going to do that to every trans person, I'm not saying Jodie here seems like a prick to me. I'm just saying, if that's your attitude, then don't get offended back. Because it's like, I didn't just block anyone. Like, it's just lame. It's so lame. Come on, get better. Like, it's just the mildest pushback ever. Oh, did I do the scroll wheel? Okay, it's changing settings. I should not do that. Yeah, frustrating. It's very tedious how you have to absorb the most horrific abuse from every single corner with absolutely no backup from anyone. And then when then you like mildly criticize someone in the most like cotton gloves or whatever. I don't know, is that a phrase? You just like do the mildest, like, oh, I'm really sorry, but maybe just please can you just bear in mind that maybe like be slightly offensive to some people, and they're like, excuse me, block every single trans person I've ever seen. I'm now Hitler Part 2. Like, I'm not saying Jodie's going to do that, but like, some people do that. They really do just flip out from the mildest criticism, and they become one of these like, culture war warriors over being offended once. Like, this is so frustrating. Yeah. Anyway, what's chat saying? I think I'm going to call it a day in a minute. So, do we have any last minute questions before we call this a success and I go off and start editing some videos? Let's have a look. I would have liked to have get it working on Twitter. I downloaded a plugin called Multiple Output for OBS, and I set it up. And when I click start, it does go live on Twitch. Sorry, I meant Twitch, not Twitter. But there's no picture. kind of a problem. But yeah, I mean, Domini's saying, yeah, they can dish it out, but they absolutely can't take it back at all. They buckle under the slightest pushback. You might have a Dutch accent, I don't know. And they buckle under the slightest pushback. Yeah, like in this case, I don't really think she's dishing it out, and I don't really think it's quite like that. But certainly, transphobes and gender criticals, my goodness, they'll say the most, like they'll go out of their way to say the most violent, horrific thing you've ever seen in your life, and then you'll be like, I think you're horrible, and then they'll write some monologue about how they were abused by the trans cult and how they, oh, it's so hard being me. My best friend left me just because all I did once was say that, you know, trans people are all mutilated, degenerate freaks, and now they're saying that I'm not very nice and I can't handle it. Like, God, some of them are so fucking pathetic. Unbelievable. €2 donation from Christians Against Dinosaurs. Take care, Katie. Look forward to seeing more of you. Well, you're only going to see this part of me, probably. Maybe the back of my head if I ever look round. Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'm going to call it now because I've been talking for 2.5 hours. My voice is starting to run out of juice. Oh yeah. So Lola asks, do you mean people like Senk, is it Senk, Chenk, and Anna who flip out over the mild criticism for spreading transphobic talking points on TYT? Yeah, I don't really know much about TYT. I saw a few clips of them like shouting about stuff, and then I saw a few clips of them shouting about trans people and just saying the most like ridiculous nonsense stuff and just being completely unwilling to listen to anyone. Yeah, they seem to have gone off the rails. I don't really know much about them or really care about them, to be honest, but yeah. Oh yeah, they keep crying about how TERF is a slur, and it was their own disingenuous term when they tried to plant the cuckoo egg within the feminist movement. Good way of describing it. Yeah, I feel like TERF is a slur discourse is like 5 years ago. No one gives a shit anymore. Like, they never believed that. We never believed that. Now everyone knows what the word means. They don't believe that. Like, it's just everything that gender critical people do is so dishonest. They just lie so much. Like, even, of course, they lie about trans people because they hate trans people, but they lie about their own fucking movement. Like, they lie about their own motivation. They'll be like, no one's trying to take away trans rights. And then, like, you ask them 2 questions. And then, like, 3 minutes later, they're like, well, of course, I want to take away all trans rights. It's like, do you just have no conviction? You just, God, it's just so pathetic. Like, everything I say, I mean, and everything I mean, I say. And they're these fucking losers who, like, they're thinking to themselves, oh, I fucking hate trans people, they're disgusting. And then you're like, so you think trans people are disgusting? And they're like, no, prove it. No one's ever said that. I'd never say that. No one in the history of the world has ever said that. And you're like, what? Just fucking say it, you weak loser. My God. So weak, pathetic. Yeah, even the name of their movement is a lie. Yeah, that gender critical is a proper democratic people's republic of Korea. Is a proper, like, we are going to describe ourselves in the exact opposite of what we actually are. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much, everyone. Remember, just try and stay positive. Don't panic. Don't panic other people. Talk to trans people. Make friends. Make community. If you are even remotely good at something that could help trans people, do it. Even if you think it's going to be shit, even if you're worried no one will like it, just do a thing. And harass your, well, not harass, that's the wrong word. Pester your MP. Write them a letter. If they don't respond, I wrote my MP a letter just before Christmas. They haven't responded. I'm going to write them another one. I'm going to get a meeting with them. You should do the same. And I'll see you all 8 p.m. UK time next week, Wednesday. And